And here we go. And intro. Welcome to the newest episode of the Horror Podcast. I am one of your hosts for today's festivities. My name is Tyler, and I'm the editor-in-chief here at Signal Horizon, a magazine dedicated to exploring genre fiction in and out of the classroom.
And I'm Orrin Gray, Monster Ambassador at Signal Horizon and co-host of this here podcast.
Thankfully, co-host. Somebody's got to make some sense of the bullshit that I'm talking about. But tonight we are joined by somebody that will put us both to shame, I'm sure. We are joined tonight by Nadia Bulkin. Nadia is an award-winning author of short stories that discuss the macabre, the weird, and the sublime. Her short story collection, She Said Destroy, was nominated for a Shirley Jackson Award. She is an alumni of the National Speech and Debate Association, so we know that she is a special one. But welcome back to the show, Nadia.
Thanks for having me back. This is where I come to talk about all my favorite movies. Last time I talked about A Dark Song, so it's awesome.
Yeah, and like that was one of those movies we always kind of ask people, like, what is a movie that you want to talk about? What is a movie that you would like to share with the audience? And I had not heard of that one, and now it's like in my letterboxed like favorites. It awesome. Is such a fantastic film. So, and I think shares some space with tonight's film as well, which we will get to in just a minute. But tonight on the Horror Podcast, we're going to spend some time talking about what we've been watching and reading. Ideally, we'll help you find some free genre content on the internet. And then we're going to spend the remainder of our episode exploring the painful truth behind our faith or our lack of faith by examining the latest movie from A24, Saint Maude. But before we get to Saint Maude, Orrin, Nadia, let's go Nadia first. What are you reading? What are you watching? What's going on in your world?
Yeah. So let's see what I'm reading. I'm reading this creepy little book called Await Your Reply by Dan Shawn. I'm not entirely sure what's going on yet, but it's very creepy and I'm enjoying that.
So what's like the general log line or the...
So it's like it's all these people who have fractured identities and you're not entirely sure how they all intersect, but you're starting to get the sense that they do. Okay. And that people are not exactly who they say they are. So it's interesting because it touches on a lot of sort of conspiratorial thinking and the idea that there's like secret messages, that no one else can see, but they might be real, but no, they're not, so that I think actually kind of relates to Saint Maude in some ways.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I like, we should say you work in Washington, D.C., so you see politics firsthand. Yes. Anytime we discuss conspiracies, we would be really remiss if we didn't take some time and at least ask, like, was January 6th a fucking horror movie for you? Because it sure feels like
basically.
Yeah. Had to have been scary, especially with conspiracy theories and everything else.
It was very scary, honestly. It was, it didn't, no one I knew was there. But I knew I had friends who were like, a couple blocks away kind of thing in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. And it was very alarming to see it all happen live. And just I remember the panic sensation of like, no one is coming to save us. That was how I felt. And I think, I calmed down once it felt like there was like, a response, like the National Guard was coming. But there was like 40 minutes or so where it really felt like this is just where we're going. And I think for me, like, it's especially difficult because I lived in Indonesia in 1998 when there was like massive upheaval. And I mean, that was a very different situation. But in terms of just like state violence and disruption, I have that in my past. And so it was not awesome to see that here. You know, it's like the kind of place where like my parents were like, you're going to be safer here, you know? And I think realizing that you're not is a little hard.
Yeah, that's a stark reality. I was working with some of my debate students as they prepare for their nationals competition, and the debate topic is about social media and democracy. And the question that they asked me was like, it is a discussion about India's social media policy or Russia's social media policy or China's social media policy regarding democracy, all that germane to American democracy. And I was like, guys, I think everything's on the table now, you know, like, of course it is. And
Absolutely.
That is bonkers to me that
Yeah.
we found ourselves here, you know? Yeah. So hopefully it leads to a whole bunch of really rad horror stuff in the next decade, as long as we can navigate the storm, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
Well, I cut you off. Anything else that you're taking a look at?
Yeah. So let's see. A couple movie recs I wanted to share. One was The Boys from County Hell, which is a new movie. It's like an Irish vampire, Northern Ireland vampire movie.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like Shaun of the Dead, but with vampires.
Cool.
Super fun. And that one is, I believe, on Shudder. So
great.
I think a lot of horror fans probably have that.
Yeah.
And then I just watched one the other night that came out in the early 2010s called Silent House, and it's a remake of a foreign movie. So I need to track down the original.
Okay.
But this one is the American remake. And it was just like, it's like a nightmare on camera. It's like found footage, but not, and all in the dark. And it's like kind of like Blair Witch, but like also it's all kind of psychosis themed. It's just like really good. And Elizabeth Olsen plays the lead and I love her. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that was a really great find that I felt like every time I'd seen it go by on streaming, I was like, that just looks like another, you know, girl and trapped in a haunted house kind of movie. And I was kind of like, you know, but I'm really glad I gave it a shot because it was a lot better than I thought it would be. And then the last thing I'll recommend is BBC's The Battersea Poltergeist podcast, which is like a docudrama about a real haunting that I think took place in like the 50s in Battersea. Is really, really good. So
cool.
Yeah, a whole bunch of recs for me.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. So Silent House, let's go back there for a second. That's like all pre like Marvel Cinematic Universe for her, right? So
yeah. That's like her oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess up the names, but Marcy May Marlene. Like that era of Elizabeth Olsen, which is like where I first started watching her.
Sure.
And it's very much that kind of character. If you haven't seen that, hugely recommend that one. Honestly, everyone should watch that one. So yeah.
I'll add that to my list. All right.
Good.
And I think I have seen the Battersea Poltergeist stuff thrown in the mix as a really good companion to the newest Conjuring that's going to come out on HBO Max here in about a week. So, yeah, I'm always down for that. Sounds good. Yeah. Orrin, I know you've been slaving away working on whatever ginormous projects that you have.
Secret things.
So, have you managed to take a look or
I have watched precious little. I have been watching like sporadic episodes of the second season of Creepshow.
Okay.
I'm like 2 in at this point or something. Like it's I'm not far, but it's, you know, it's a lot like the first season was so far, which is fun. I have complaints about the show, certainly, but like every time they do that thing where the background drops out and it's just like the bold colors and shapes like a comic book, all my complaints drop away whenever they do that.
Yeah.
I'm in my happy place when they do that.
Yeah, like I was describing that show to somebody else genre-wise who hadn't taken a look, and it was like they feel for me a little bit like the TikTok version of some sort of horror thing. Like they're very short, but they're so fun, and very rarely do I like sit through like the 15 or 20-minute episodes or however long. They are not very long, and think like, man, I sure wish I could get this time back. Like some are better than others, but they are a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, so. It's nice that they are so short because they never overstay their welcome. So
yeah, and I in my mind, I know that's not how they function, but in my mind, if I see like a particular vignette that I love, then it's like a proof of concept, right? I'm like, oh, I want to see 90 minutes of this, right? Or yeah, but for me, probably more like 80 minutes because. Like I fall asleep too easy now, so something shorter. But yeah, I like Creepshow. It's good stuff. Again, you can catch Creepshow on Shudder. So one more reason to check it out. Well, I have been reading a lot. I don't know. So sometimes you get in those kicks, right? And I noticed that Stephen Graham Jones' novella, I guess I would call it, Night of the Mannequins, was nominated for a Stoker Award, and it's been on my list of stuff I need to read because I absolutely like favorite novel maybe of all time. I was in love with The Only Good Indian. Only Good Indians? Indian? Yep. I don't know.
Plural.
Okay. But I love that, right? So Nadia, you mentioned that the novel that you're reading has this like penchant for unreliable narrators, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Night of the Mannequins has that times a million, and it is like the back of the book, right? Like is essentially like, this is a big creature feature. There's a mannequin, and it goes crazy and it kills everybody. It is not about that in the least bit, and I've never been happier. Like I just poured through it. It was scary. It was creepy. It involves teenagers, and I like that's my shtick. Anytime that we can talk about high school, I'm in. So yeah, I cannot recommend Night of the Mannequins any more than I possibly could, because it's awesome. So something I'm a little more lukewarm on is probably Army of the Dead. Have any of you guys had a chance to check out Zack Snyder's?
No.
Okay. Like, I'm very sad because I love the Dawn of the Dead remake. It is so fun. It's one of the things that I show at Zombie 101, the class I teach in the summertime, just because it has enough of the old version that we can talk about the themes, but it's got some really great, like that opening 20 minutes is, I think, of the best opening 20 minutes of a horror film that I've seen in a long time. Army of the Dead is not that. It is it's just okay. It's a little like Die Hard with zombies instead of weird international terrorists, and like see it for free maybe, but don't go into it with any kind of expectations. So yeah, it's fine. Disappointingly, it's whatever. That's as lukewarm as an endorsement as I could possibly muster. So and the last thing I wanted to mention, I've been on a Chuck Wendig kick as of late, and I just poured through his big like Nature Strikes Back novel called Invasive, which involves flesh-eating ants, and it's so much fun. It's great. It's got great kind of creature monsters. It's got a good hero. So check it out. That one I listened to for free from the library. So hey, even better. Okay, so my question to you guys before we move into our dark corners of the web bit here. Bloody Disgusting put out an article yesterday that I found super intriguing, and I kind of wanted to hear what you guys thought about it. The nature of the argument was that all horror is political on some level, okay? But Joe George concentrated mostly on the latest Saw movie and made the argument that all the Saw movies generally had this like kind of anti-police brutality motif throughout them. And I wanted to know two things from you guys. Number one, do you believe that all horror is political? And two, I don't know, how do you feel about those Saw franchise movies? Are they just just in it for the gore, which is fine too, but or is there a deeper message? Nadia, you go first.
So first question, yes, I do think that all horror is political. I think everything is political, so it's not like a horror specific thing. I think that I'm a political science major, like that's my background. I feel like all it means when you say everything is political is like the things are about power in society, and like maybe nature shows aren't, but like they have like societies, animals do, so like
right.
For me, it's all everything. Even if you don't think you're being political, you are being political. Like there is a message in there somewhere. I am very much a believer of that. So I don't think that it's necessarily it doesn't mean anything more than that. And on the second one, I am not a aficionado of the Saw movies. I've only seen, I think, the first one, maybe like a little bit of other ones. So I do not know.
Okay.
I cannot give an informed opinion on that.
Damn it, Nadia.
I'm sorry. I just, it's just like not my bag. Like.
So for once at least, I did do the homework and read the thing you linked instead of just not reading it like I usually do and just being like, I don't know. To tackle the second question, I am in the same boat as Nadia, actually. I've seen all of maybe three Saw movies, because I saw the one, not the most recent one, but the one before it, the one that the Spearig brothers did. I saw it. It didn't make any sense to me because I hadn't seen the other like 20. So,
yeah.
But I did see it. So yeah, I can't really say. I do agree that the kind of whole torture porn subgenre came out of a certain amount of discomfort with the fact that we were torturing people. Like,
yeah.
The U.S. government, like it's a very American subgenre in a lot of ways, even though it's spread into like the new French extremity and all that kind of stuff. But and I definitely like the people who cite that as kind of its zeitgeist. I think they're probably right, but beyond that, I haven't seen enough Saw movies to say.
Yeah.
As far as I agree. Like all everything is political. Like to say that things are not political is kind of absurd. Like it's to just misunderstand what the words you're using mean, basically. Like, and so when people say that, usually what they mean is that they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for a reason. Like some things are more bluntly political than others, and some things are more like targeting a specific thing, like they're more pointed. But I mean, every statement contains a syllogism of some kind. Like you're always saying something.
Right.
So. Yeah,
there's always an argument, right? Like,
just
especially in the way that Hollywood functions, even on an indie level, right? Like, raising money to make a film is inherently political in nature, and I don't claim to be an expert on the industry by any stretch, but I have talked to enough filmmakers to know it isn't an easy process to raise money. So you have to be used to making that argument, I think.
That's a speech and debate saying everything is an argument.
Yeah, right. That's why we have you on, Nadia. You and I can probably lament how we were, that was hammered into our brains from
exactly.
Like careful what you say and how you say it. Yeah. But I think that's part of the reason why the horror genre has always appealed to me, because like everything else, I feel like if you have a big budget, like Oscar award winning thing, right? obviously there are going to be overtones and themes and that kind of stuff, but they're not always going to be transgressive. And sometimes they're going to be buried beneath like all of this kind of glurgy stuff that you have to get through when, you know, like you could take a horror movie and you're like, nah, I'm going to torture the shit out of this guy to at least engage in a conversation about why like torturing the shit out of people is probably not good, you know, like,
Or not effective.
right, exactly. But so I read that Bloody Disgusting article yesterday, and then I read an article about that Belarusian reporter that they grounded his plane, right, his Ryanair plane, and like they're pretty certain that he is getting tortured and everything now. And like the United States came out and condemned it, you know, obviously good to condemn that, but also like by all accounts we still got guys at Guantanamo Bay that who knows what we're doing to, right? So yeah, it's just one more way the world feels interconnected, and horror seems to be the thread that is connecting all of those bits. So hey, there is a fourth guest. Who's our fourth guest?
It's Piper.
Hey, Piper. Yeah. Oh, it's always great to have a black cat on the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, she's very. That's why I got her. You know, obviously to fit the Halloween theme.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, you're gonna give her back tomorrow, right?
I mean, we joke that she was adopted right before Election Day 2016. So
wow.
we'll always remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she is bad luck.
She's still here though.
Yeah, she saw us do 2020. That, you know, like she's redeeming herself. I get it. You know, before we put the Saw stuff to bed though, like I like you guys. There were a whole bunch of people that are much better probably managers and editors than I am, but like that watched every Saw movie before this newest one came out. And I tried to do that, and then I realized that I don't like a lot of them. So I was like, you know, this is not my cup of tea. But in the first one, at least, I think there is a real managed care critique. Like, because part of the reason why he's an asshole is because he has this, you know, like Jigsaw, right? The bad guy. Is that he has this cancer and he couldn't really afford treatment, and it metastasized and the system let him down or whatever it is, right? And I think there is a broader argument maybe there that never gets explored about how, like, I don't know, private insurance is really terrible and oftentimes will default to these kind of archaic treatments that aren't necessarily as effective, but they are cheaper. Chemotherapy being a great example of that. Like, obviously it is effective, but it does terrible things on your body. And I thought that was an interesting discussion that I wish the Saw movies would have engaged more in, but they were too busy dropping people into pits of hypodermic needles. So, you know, hey, whatever. Yeah. You don't always have time for that. I get it.
Exactly.
Whatever. Yeah, but before this episode, I tried to rewatch that last movie, and you're right. It doesn't make any kind of sense unless you've kept up with the continuity. But like, it's just rough, you know, like it's hard.
I was really sad because, so the Spearing brothers, their last couple things have not been good, but their first few things probably also weren't good. But they were they were really inventive, right? They were really inventive and interesting in how they were made. And I was like, man, I feel like those guys could do really cool, stupid Saw, puzzle traps, right? And even those weren't that great. There were a few that were fine, but I don't know. I really wanted them to let loose a lot more than they did. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I felt like the first film or two gave everybody a shot. You know, I was like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to do something terrible to yourself, but if you do that, then you're gonna survive. And the last few is no, we're gonna force you to do terrible shit, and you're gonna die. So it's that doesn't seem fair. I don't like movies that are mean, and that shit's real mean. So I'm a softie. What can I say? Speaking of things that are not mean, but I think kind of cool, our dark corner of the web is not a story. It's not a short film. It was really a Tumblr page. Did you guys have a chance to check this out at all?
No, I didn't do this particular homework. I didn't even look.
It's
I've seen it. I saw
okay.
it recently, like go around, and I was like, "This is awesome."
Yeah. So it's a Tumblr page, which I didn't think people had anymore, but they do. And it is for the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park, and it is a conglomeration of artifacts that other people have designed about, like, essentially like a pit to hell that people go and visit. And there's everything from like I don't know, from a drawing of what it looks like to like a wildlife incident report where somebody was attacked, and like it's just so detailed and so much fun that it is a rabbit hole that you could have a few drinks or, you know, of smoke and lose yourself in for like hours and hours and hours. And for horror people, it's like a hoot. So yeah, man, I say go lose yourself in the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park. You can't
But
do wrong.
potentially don't actually go into the
Go
mystery.
lose yourself in the mystery.
Don't
Flesh
actually
Pit.
lose yourself.
Right.
You know?
Lose yourself on the Tumblr, not in the
Right.
actual pit. Yeah.
I literally, when I first saw this, I was like, "Is this real?" Like, even though I knew like it was not, but
Yeah.
I love that sort of like extremely built out horror stuff.
Yeah.
That you're kind of like, this was made by somebody who has looked at national park maps
Yeah.
and can, you know, like actually knows what is said on these maps. I love that level of detail.
Yeah. And it is all user generated, which I think is a total hoot, and is like it's really tapping into the like it is true. It is truthful that a lot of people go missing in national parks, but a lot of them are found. And I think some of the conspiracies that surround it are a little overblown, but it like taps into some of that kind of mythos. And I don't know. I'm totally here for creepy shit that could be real, but you know, probably isn't. It's a lot like it could be an entry for. Are you guys at all familiar with Atlas Obscura, which is like it feels like it could be an entry straight out of that. So yeah,
and I love that. So like, and I feel like that's what a lot of like found footage type movies like miss is getting that level of like plausibility in like how they present it, like. So that, you know, so it seems real until it doesn't. I feel like a lot of them like don't put that much heart into it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And
the best ones like nail that. So
and when they do, it brings so much more to the movie or the book, right? Like I think Orrin, you and I were a big fan of the movie came out last year called Underwater. Nadia, are you familiar at all with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's that whole shit at the end during the credits where you get these like news articles that kind of spin up and like discuss the, you know, what happened and the cover up. And like, I love that stuff.
Yeah,
I could have a whole movie of that.
I love framing devices.
Yeah.
Like the movie Antrim. Ever made. And most people like the movie itself. I actually like the framing devices around it, where you have like people, you know, academics talking about it, because that to me is more scary, because it's like, yeah, this sounds like it could be real now. You know? I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that we did an episode, I think it was early this season or late last season, about Antrim and
Fury of the Demon or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Which is all framing device. There's
all framing device.
Yeah, check it out sometime. It's about a fictitious like silent film that George Méliès did.
Cool.
I don't know if you can say his name.
Cool.
And it's like the framing parts from Antrim, but without the movie.
Okay, awesome. That sounds like my bag.
Yeah, it totally is too. It's so much fun and very short, which is also awesome. But yeah, man, just give me a whole bunch of that. And I love that. Yeah, because the movie that the Antrim, you know, like kind of the second half or whatever, is just okay, right? Like, but
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all that beginning shit that it's like, oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I think it's time to claw our way out of the mystery flesh pit and head to our essential question for today, which is, what can Saint Maude tell us about faith and the sublime? Before we get into that discussion, let's take a look at the trailer.
Dear God, your presence graces the air, and soon everyone will see.
Hi, are you Maude?
Yes, hi. It takes nothing special to mop up after the dying.
You're prettier than the last one.
But to save a soul, that's quite something. Bless Amanda's body, and bless her mind, which is shrouded in darkness.
When you pray, do you get a response?
Oh, it's like he's physically in me. It's how he guides me.
My little savior.
Hey, I thought that was you. What you up to?
I'm a private carer.
You're still nursing?
What?
They know what happened.
All the good girls go to hell. 'Cause even God herself.
I just want to see you loosen up.
I've got more important things on my mind.
There's my little savior.
Maude, he isn't real.
Nothing worthwhile comes easily.
All the good girls go to hell. I turned to ignore you. Don't say I didn't warn you.
You must be the loneliest girl I've ever seen.
I'm ready and open. I feel fuller of your love than ever before. I have a responsibility.
Oh, yes, of course.
This is life and death on another level. What if I'm getting it all wrong?
All the good girls go to hell.
Spring of 2020 gave rise to spring of 2021. But now St. Maude is open and available on Amazon Prime. And here is how the Internet Movie Database describes the movie. St. Maude follows a pious nurse who becomes dangerously obsessed with saving the soul of her dying patients. Nadia, having her soul would be an even more interesting movie. But tell me what you think. What'd you think of the movie?
I mean, that's a very broad question, Tyler.
Did you like it?
I loved it. Yeah,
Okay.
I loved it. Obviously, I don't know how much of a spoiler show this.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Everyone's used to spoilers, so yeah, go
Okay,
for
great. So the final shot is what absolutely made the movie for me.
it. Yeah, it's so great.
And I was very interested to read an interview with the director where she says that the final shot represents reality. Because I didn't see it that way.
Okay.
But that's fine. Like I appreciate that. I thought it was actually quite interesting that I thought it was an obvious representation of hell. And the director was like, no, this is reality. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I love the experience of watching it. I loved Maude as a character. I love any sort of movie or book, anything that focuses on young women, sort of unconventional young women. And she is definitely that. So, I really appreciated that aspect of it and all of sort of the elements of like her mania, essentially. So yeah, I really loved it.
Yeah. All right. I want to come back and explore that ending in your take on it, because I think I'm going to like it a lot. But before we get there, Orrin, what'd you think?
I mean, I liked it. It was what I said on Letterboxd was something like, it's not my brand, but it's really well done. Like, I mean, it's, and it is like, I feel like it's kind of undeniably really well done. It's a very familiar like narrative, but like, the acting is great, the cinematography is great, it looks great, the sound is great, And I loved learning that there's a Coney Island in England, which I was completely unaware of. I was very confused for a while about like why all these people in Coney Island had British accents. And also there's not a house like that near the Coney Island, like the real Coney Island, the one in New York, which is probably the fake Coney Island, actually, as it turns out. But yeah, so I spent like the first like 20 minutes going like, what is this actually Coney Island? I'm so confused. But
yeah, and it doesn't help that yes, some of the characters have British accents, some of them don't, right?
Yes.
And some of the accents are very specifically different than one another. Yeah. So I think all of that creates this kind of maelstrom of confusion in the beginning or whatever. But I think that's kind of done purposefully to knock you off balance, because I'm, that's entirely what I think this film wants to do and is pretty successful in doing, I saw this film like what feels like a decade ago at Fantastic Fest. It was the first film. It was the first film I saw there. It was the first film I had ever seen at Fantastic Fest ever. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the best experience ever. And it was a great experience. But I think that seeing this movie in a festival, right, in a crowded theater with the director was supposed to be there, but her flight got delayed. But, there was all this, A24 had just bought it like 3 days before. And the director, this is her debut feature, it just was bonkers to me. Because, I mean, we'll talk in depth about A24 in just a minute, but like they're it, right? They're making prestige horror. And if prestige horror isn't your thing, if that label isn't your thing, that's cool too. Orrin and I have gone on and on about what we call those types of movies. But like, to be like, oh, this is your first movie? Yes, we want it. And, I think is so remarkable and so interesting. And I just fell in love with the movie then. It hit a little differently now, but I still really, really, really like it. So let's, before I kind of get into the scripted stuff, Nadia, you tell me what you think initially you thought that ending was representative of. I'm dying to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I thought that so basically the end is like she thinks that she's going to heaven.
Right.
And, lights herself on fire for God, as they say. And then there's this jarring shot that shows her in darkness in flames. And I was like, oh, she went to hell. That was my interpretation. I was like, that wasn't God talking to her. She's been talking to a demon.
Wow. All right.
And now she's done the demon's bidding, and now she's going to hell. And maybe that probably says something about my distrust of religious things.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite tropes. And it's something that I write about somewhat. It's not yet, but like I want to, is like the idea of like, how do you know the sign and wonder is divine, positively, or not? So that's immediately how I interpreted it.
Okay. I didn't even approach that thinking, but I love that reading of this film.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think of that way either at all, which I love it too.
Fucking awesome.
So has anyone here seen Occult? It's a found footage movie, Japanese one, from the same guy named Noroi.
I have seen it once, I think.
Okay.
I've seen the second one because you told me to watch it, right? In the second one, Noroi, right?
Yeah. Well, Noroi was actually the first one, but so Occult basically has that ending. The one that Nadia just like described, like there's this guy who believes he's doing this thing for this really good reason, and turns out he's not, and in the end he goes to hell. Like that's basically the end of, like, I'm spoiling it, but that's basically the end of Occult. Like,
is that the one with the floating things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it's such a gut punch. I mean, like, he's doing horrible things already in the movie, but like it's such a gut punch to like see how utterly misguided he was in it. And so I kind of love that reading of Saint Maud also, because yeah, she's also, obviously very misguided no matter how she's interpreting it. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to the discussion about Saw, actually, and whether that's an interrogation of torture, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, doing things that you think, this is a terrible thing that I'm doing, but I have to, because it is the right thing to do. And, everything within me is, like, I don't like this, but I have to do it. And the reveal that, like, well, actually, you didn't have to do it. And it's not a good thing. I mean, that is one of the most, like Orrin said, like brutal gut punches I think a plot can have.
Yeah, and I like, that's why I kind of wanted to frame our discussion around that idea of faith, because like ultimately that's what faith is, right? Like you don't have proof, you don't have evidence. You're like, this feels like the right thing to do, right? And I'm going to do it despite maybe some countervailing evidence or, whatever it is. And I think that subject is so ripe for exploration in horror movies that I don't know. I think that's super, super interesting. Obviously Maude as a character, I think, is really complex, and any discussion of the movie has to get into like kind of what her deal is, right? Like in every aspect, because I think it's really interesting. She is an independent woman, right? Like at least economically, she's got her own job, and she's, not dependent on, another person. She's got mental illness, right? Are we all on the same page that the shit that she was seeing?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
I'm gonna go like with an I don't know on that one.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like you either have, which I had not read it at all, as you either have a supernatural explanation, right? Like she's talking to a demon or something, right?
Right.
Or she has mental illness. Like those are pretty much your options. She could be talking to an actual god, but that seems that the ending kind of undercuts that.
Yeah, at least a little, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, right? I mean, it depends on your view of God.
Right. She could be talking to a really shitty asshole god. That's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, like sinners in the hand of an angry god. Like,
but I feel like that's basically a demon at that point. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like, how do we differentiate?
Right. Like,
right. Yeah.
Anytime God is a huge dick, he's probably a demon.
I am 100% comfortable with that. Like, oh yeah, that was a fucking asshole. Yeah. I like it. Okay.
But like I certainly read it as, that she had some sort of mental illness. Of course we don't know what kind because we never diagnose it in the movie. But yeah, your other option is that something supernatural actually is talking to her.
The other aspect of her personality that I think we at least have to give a little bit of time to, like, maybe it's the weird male gaze that I am bringing to this film, which is 100% a possibility. But I feel like there is a romantic vibe that she has with the patient that she's caring for. It is not really blatant, it's not out in the open, but there is this tension between the two as her patient tries to get her out of this kind of conservative modality, right? So do we think that this could be a picture that at least is attempting to discuss like some LGBT stuff, especially as it pertains to faith? Because that is an interesting conversation.
It is.
No,
I did sort of read a bit of that. I don't know if it's like the strongest thing necessarily, because I think that I'm not LGBT, so like I don't, it's like it's hard for me to sort of say, but my read on it was kind of like it's a very intense relationship. And sometimes intensity can look like there is romantic overtures when there may not be. I think especially between women, that is true.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I do think it's hard not to read sort of a bit of like their, you know, the aspect of like this very religious Christian woman versus this like atheist out woman, you know.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to like see but in terms of like the actual sort of like intent there, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, so I feel like the movie kind of reads as though Maude can't have relationships with people except through the lens of her.
Ooh, I like
Of
that.
her
Okay.
religious mania, whatever you want to call it. Like, she doesn't know how. She can't relate to other people in any way. And so, like, her relationship with this person is very intense, but it can't be romantic. It can't be sexual because there's this thing in the way that is her conviction that she's saving this person's soul, and she can't let herself have any other feelings for her because she has to be saving her. She's a martyr.
Right.
She's martyring herself.
Her soul is for God. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, I think the idea is sort of that she doesn't know what her relationship would be otherwise, if it weren't for this, because it's the only way she can relate to anyone.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And Amanda is that character's name, I'm pretty sure, and played really brilliantly by Jennifer L. I believe is how you pronounce her last name. But if I am remembering correctly, and again, it's like the day before the last day of school, so my brain is mush anyways. But I think Elle's character is a retired ballet dancer, right? She is this, and I love the idea, at least in my mind. I associate ballet dancers with this kind of like they use their body to create art. It is a very sensual medium, and I don't mean in a sexual way. I mean like in a like they're physically using their bodies on a regular basis to create this art form. And at least in my mind, I commonly associate that with like ballet shoes and feet, right? And I've been friends with some dancers in my day, and like their feet are always torn up and like they look chewed up, right? And the like the standout scene in this movie you see in the trailer is where, you know, she's got these like black chucks that she puts
Maude does.
Yeah, Maude does. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that would be a way different movie.
Yes.
Very strange. But and then she walks around in these shoes that are full of tacks, and like I immediately made the connection between the type of pain that those two characters had.
That's so interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
But in fundamentally different ways, you
Right.
know, like, and I don't know. I loved the parallels of those two characters because I'm, you know, very clearly Rose Glass, the director, like wants us to draw some of those parallels.
Yeah.
What that made me think of when you started talking about ballet is like, again, not a ballet dancer, but the stereotype there is like almost like it's such an intense dance practice, you know, like you start when you're very young and it, you know, you reshape your body.
Yeah.
Like there is a strong sort of like self-harm undercurrent that informs it. I mean, obviously not always, but like a lot of times there's like very unhealthy practices that allow you to reach, you know, to be all that you can be as the perfect ballerina. Yeah. So it's like, it's interesting to think of ballet and religion as like their own obsessions.
Yeah.
And like Maude doesn't have that sort of like a creative outlet.
Right.
Yeah.
That Amanda did, you know, where she could pour herself into that and then be acclaimed and have a community, right?
Yeah. I like it.
Doesn't have any of that.
Yeah. And something like relatively productive, you know, very like ballet dancers are getting something out of it, you know?
Yeah.
And I love the idea that there are both houses of worship, right? Like the stage and the theater is this, you know, for a lot of us that enjoy that can be very religious, can be, you know, like in the same vein as a church would be. So yeah.
Exactly. And that was the point at which I sort of like related to Maude. Like I have no religious anything at all, but I have been in, you know, sort of like what feels like fugue states with like creativity.
Yeah.
And, you know, my therapist says that, like, you know, she calls it like, you know, if your creative brain is just wired differently, you know, it's touched by fire, you know. And, you know, like when I call her in the middle of the night and I'm bouncing off the walls and I feel like I'm, you know, can't even keep the ideas in my head. Like, I feel like that's kind of like a hypomanic state. And I feel like that's similar to what Maude is experiencing. I mean, not obviously, but like, there's like this sort of like this kernel of like extremity.
Yeah.
In your devotion. To something external, feels external. That's really interesting, and I think that's what appealed to me the most about her character, and you know, and like the willingness to like sacrifice all in order to worship at that altar.
Yeah, like to buy ticket and like buy a ticket on that boat for that passage or whatever. Yeah, love that. I mean, obviously, I write like nonfiction for Signal Horizon and that kind of stuff, but I'm not a fiction writer. Orrin, do you find when that kind of creative element, like Nadia was talking about, when it bites you, it like, you know, it takes over, or you feel compelled, or, you know?
I mean, it can, absolutely. You know, it happens sometimes, sometimes not, but sometimes it's just work. But I mean, yeah, sometimes, you know, absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's a matter of like, you don't know where things come from. Like you put something together and then later on you're like, I don't know how I put that together. I don't know where I got that from. I don't know. And sometimes you can trace it down and sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's just like,
Yeah, does that freak you out? And you're like, wow, that came from a really weird fucking place. I think I'd like want to like have a drink with my wife and be like, okay, I wrote this shit. Help me figure out where the hell this came from. You know, like I think that would be half the fun. Whatever. Yeah. Well, I tell you, having listened to both of you, brilliant creative writers, talk to me about, you know, like feeling similar to Maude. What I'm hearing is to write a successful short story or a piece of fiction, I need to walk around with tacks in my Converse. That's what I'm getting.
Whatever works for you, man.
Okay. The Horror Podcast does not recommend that.
Does not recommend.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to run like a little disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's run it on the Chiron at the bottom.
Yeah,
right. You can change it. Please don't do this.
It's just like blinking, flashing, like do not follow.
Yeah.
Do not try this at home.
Yeah. Ignore that asshole. Yeah.
Done in studio by professionals. Do not try this at home.
Yeah, like we need to, like back in the day, because I was like a 15-year-old like male that grew up watching MTV. They would always run that disclaimer on Jackass. We're gonna have to do that before every episode now. We won't run it.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it feels like the right time to transition into our other movies. It's normally 4 movies, but because we have a guest, it's 6 movies. Kind of the 2 movies that we think would go really well with this feature film. Before we move there, though, anybody have anything else they want to say about the film?
I just wanted to mention that Nadia said something about like having a community, like with the ballet would let you have kind of a community you could express yourself in and connect with other people. And I think that's a really telling thing about Maude's character versus any of the characters around her, is that like her religion is just hers. She doesn't have a church. She doesn't have a community of any kind. Like it's just like her God speaking or channeling directly through her. There's nothing connecting her to anything else, and there's nothing connecting her to anyone else.
Yeah.
Which I think is, very important to her character. So
yeah, she's solitary, right?
Yeah.
And I think adding on to that, the one thing that I wanted to say was like this idea that like everyone is living in their own reality, which is something that, again, my therapist said to me when I was I was freaking out about QAnon. I was like, it's so scary, the idea that there are these people who do not operate in our reality, and they impact our reality, right? And she's like, well, everyone. I mean, that's just the way life is. Everyone lives in their own reality. And I was like, well, that's terrifying. But I now, sort of like looking back, I see what her point. Like, we all are kind of in our own little heads. And some people have more, I would say like most people share, 95% of reality. And some people are much less. Maude is maybe like much less. But at the same time, there's still that flicker of difference for all of us and how we experience the world, and how our brains literally like take in information. And I think, going back to sort of the idea of like social media and radicalization, it's like we can more and more so just all go down those rabbit holes of what we believe to be true. And that means cutting off, family and friends who don't fit in that. I mean, you see people do that.
I think all three of us here have been in conversations that we thought we had a lot of commonality with the people that we were conversing with, right? And we were like, oh, okay, these people are a lot like me and blah, blah, blah. And then they will say like one thing, right? And then you'll be like, oh shit, I like completely misread this whole thing and you're crazy, right? You'll be like, oh yeah, kid goes to play soccer with my kid, blah, 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 and does this and this. But also vaccines will, make you infertile and Bill Gates will be able to track where you're at or whatever it is. And you're like, oh shit, what do I do now? Right? Like like when we encounter those crossroads, like you can't really progress in that relationship anymore because that 1% difference is significant if it impacts one of those areas, right? Or whatever.
And I think with Maude, the question is like, which came first? Her beliefs that then cut her off from everyone else, or being cut off from everyone else and allowed to like fester down the rabbit hole of her own beliefs.
Yeah.
And you never really get a solid answer either way because you never see her life before. Like you get hints of what it was like. People talk about it, but you never see it.
Yeah.
You get like an objective view of it to the extent that,
right, because it's kind of like there is no objective, right? Like there's no objectivity in this.
Yeah. Like the only passing reference we get is that nurse that she sees that's like, oh, you're still doing home health or whatever it is that she's
right. Something bad happened.
Yeah. She had a patient die.
Yeah. Which she probably killed. Maybe.
Possibly accidentally.
Yeah.
And like she says, like Maude says something about like the other nurse who's trying to be nice to her now wasn't nice to her before or something, which kind of implies that maybe she was more isolated, but also like later on the guy who she ends up going home with from the bar says that he used to see her there all the time going home with various different guys. So like it suggests that her life was very different.
Yes.
But how, in what way it is super unclear about. Like, was she desperately seeking some kind of connection back then? We don't know. We have no way to know.
Yeah. And it's, the movie is very purposefully vague.
Yeah.
It's that it sets off to not give you any of those answers.
Right.
So, okay, Nadia, two other movies that you think share the same kind of creative space.
Yes. So the movies I picked, one was Martyrs, which if anybody has seen that, I think pretty obvious why I chose that. Have both of you seen it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, very much along the same lines of I'm doing these terrible things to you, but it is for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it's like, no, it's not. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
And the other one that I picked was another recent movie with an unstable female lead called The Lodge.
Oh, okay.
That
did you like it?
I love The Lodge, yeah.
Okay, all right. I usually love your recommendations. It was not my favorite film, but
no, I'm so glad someone picked The Lodge. Like when I was looking, I was really happy when you picked it, because I hated it, so I didn't want to pick it. But it is the first thing I thought of too.
Yeah, right. Because she's a religious person,
right.
and basically sort of is like goes back into a religious delusion in the course of the movie, which is arguably what's happening with Maude.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like their tones are like really similar in a lot of ways.
Yes, I agree.
But Saint Maude, I think, handles it a lot better. But
I'm a sucker for those like movies with crazy female leads. Clearly.
Yeah, I think the big difference between
like an automatic like B basement level for me. Like you put a crazy young woman in the lead, I'm like automatic, at least a B.
And I will recommend it to everyone. Yeah.
Yes. It's only because so more people see those kinds of characters.
Yeah. I think it's totally fair. I think for me, the difference between those two movies, right? For whatever reason, maybe this 100%, this probably says more about me than it does the movies. But like, I think The Lodge is a much meaner film. Okay.
Yes.
Because there is a way to read Saint Maude as maybe not positive, but at least not mean. Nobody's doing anything mean, maybe the demon, right? But nobody's like going out of their way to be mean to Saint Maude, or to mean to Maude. Maybe they are sometimes exclusive, but like the entire tone of the film feels less mean. And I don't know. I just don't want people to be mean to one another. And those kids in the lodge
they're very
fucking
mean.
suck.
Yes.
Those rat bastards of children. Yeah.
I mean, I walked out of that movie and like all my friends were like, well, those kids deserved.
I mean, kind of.
I was like, this is a happy ending.
I love it. You know what? That changes my mind. I like The Lodge if the ending is happy. Yeah, okay.
I thought it was happy. I claim all happy endings. Like I'm like The Witch is a happy ending. Like all of these movies absolutely happy endings.
Oh shit! I think The Witch is most definitely a happy ending. Oh yeah,
it's like a liberation ending.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's totally good. So Orrin, your two favorites.
So I picked. I'm actually kind of feeling bad that I didn't pick Occult now, but I'm not gonna renege on it. I'm gonna go ahead. I picked Hollywood Boulevard. Was the first one I picked, which is actually referenced in this movie when when Amanda's friend says something about her like going full Norma Desmond or something.
Yeah, right.
But like. Not only is her character kind of similar to the Norma Desmond character in Hollywood Boulevard, but I feel like the plots of the movie are kind of like a flipped version of Hollywood Boulevard, where like in Hollywood Boulevard, Norma Desmond becomes sort of dangerously delusional and obsessed with her young gentleman friend. In this case, it's Maude who becomes kind of dangerously delusionally obsessed with the older starlet she's taking care of.
Sure.
So. Also, it's just a really good movie.
Yeah.
And then the other movie I picked, no one's ever seen, but it's a movie from the 70s called Dream No Evil.
Okay.
Which is, it's a lot like if Tennessee Williams had written like a Psycho knockoff for AIP in the 70s.
Interesting.
It's about this woman who like travels around in a traveling like revival preaching tent thing. And she does a high dive act as part of it because sure. And she's obsessed with finding her father and kind of goes off on a sort of a semi-religious, semi-just mania, delusion. It's very good. It's very, very slow, but it's very good. It's on, I think you can watch it on like Prime probably, but it was in one of Arrow's American Horror Project box sets.
Oh, great.
They put out of like regional like indie films. So.
Okay. Well, diving into a pool of water would have been helpful for St. Maude, right? Like that would have been a skill that would have been, yeah. I think she set herself on.
Was right there. So.
Right.
The ocean was right there.
Right. Like just walk in 5 feet and then the movie goes away. Yeah. So my movies, obviously, somebody had to pick A Dark Song because I think both are about faith and being in rapture. I think both films do a really interesting job of creating moments of deification. What I mean by that is like they represent God in really interesting and like God with a capital G in really interesting kind of ways, right? Then I picked, I'm going to call it a horror film. I don't, whatever. I picked The Last Temptation of Christ because I think that film is super interesting and gives us that idea. I think that Nadia talked about earlier in the episode that you never know who it is that's whispering in your ear, right? Like, at least according to, is that Scorsese? I think that's Scorsese, whoever directed that. Like, like even Jesus can be tempted, like if somebody is whispering in your ear that there are better things to come or, easier things or whatever it may be, then man, that voice can be real freaking tempting sometimes. And I love the idea that our realities may not be what we think that they are. So yeah, 6 films, everybody go check them out.
Really interesting that you said A Dark Song, because how I would differentiate between St. Maude and A Dark Song is that for me, A Dark Song is like a personal emotional quest.
Okay.
And St. Maude is like a more cerebral, non-personal, because you're killing the personal, right? Like she's killing all of her personal relationships in order to devote herself entirely to this higher quest.
Okay.
Whereas in A Dark Song, the main character, whose name I don't remember anymore, is like pushing away all externalities except for this one thing she holds in her heart. This one most special relationship to her with her kid.
Yeah. So I never thought about that in that kind of context, but you're right. Like at the end of the Dark Song or A Dark Song, that the last human relationship has to die to essentially open that door, right?
Yeah.
And like there's still a lot of squishiness with personal relationships with St. Maude as kind of exclusive as she has become or whatever. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, they're both fantastic films. So that would be a fucking awesome double feature. I would see that shit in a heartbeat. Now both films are slow, so it may turn some people off in that way, but man, they're definitely my jam. Nadia,
yes,
I think if you remember from last time that you were on, we always like to find somebody that maybe didn't get the movie or doesn't necessarily agree with us in their critique. Back in the day, it was anonymous Amazon users, but both Orrin and I are big Letterboxd people. So we have now found our favorite Letterboxd users that did not enjoy the film. Would you, if you feel up to it, would you read that first one that's highlighted there?
Absolutely. So here we go. Maude is not religious. Let's just get this out of the way. She's a poser, a loner, a loser who is looking for acceptance, one of those recent converts who thinks she knows the religion better than those who have practiced it their entire lives and those who preach it. In her desperate attempt to make contact with God, she allows her mental illness to take over. Yes, Maude is schizophrenic, brought on by the death of a previous patient when she worked at a hospital. All the clues are there, but it seems many reviewers take delight in seeing a mentally unstable woman commit acts of self-harm and murder. Because, yay, it's directed by a woman, starring a woman, and features hardly any men. Lol.
So I think we both put comments in here. Like, the first part of this person's critique, like, I can't really fundamentally disagree with. Like, they're nailing the plot, right?
I was like, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and what?
To be like did you think you were watching like a pro-religious like
Yeah.
endorsement of religion, or like what did you think was happening?
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't even feel like I don't even feel like the movie is anti-religious necessarily,
No.
right? Like,
No,
there are
no.
absolutely movies where it's like religion is insanity. There are movies that have argued that, but this one's not one. Hers just is, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really make an argument one way or the other about religious practice broadly,
Mm-mm.
just about mods.
And I think it works really hard not to conflate those two.
Right.
We never see her in a church congregation.
Yeah.
We never see her like she talks about her faith individually to people, but only in big, broad, kind of esoteric ways. Like, I feel him in me, right? And all this kind of shit that is like, you can't track that down to a specific religion or a specific practice. It is universal, maybe in its exploration. So, like, yeah, like, I don't know, dude. It sounds like you may have been a practicing Catholic forever. I don't think Saint Maude is getting in your way, right? Like, you can keep doing that, and it's 100% okay. I might also add that this person has given exactly 5 movies 5 stars, and one of them is like the 1980s BMX movie Rad that I remember being like 9 and loving, but also
BMX like bikes.
Yeah, BMX bikes.
Yeah.
Look, I haven't seen Rad in a really long time. Maybe it's 5 stars.
It's not 5 stars.
Maybe it's aged better than you expected.
Right. So I went through when you pointed out that he'd given Brad 5 stars. I went through his like whole Letterboxd history because I was curious. He also does a like weekly Adam Sandler movie night.
Oh no!
So heads up. Just
yikes. So
it's fraught, this guy's relationship with movies is what I'm saying.
Fraught. I like it. Although I will tell you, I'm not an Adam Sandler guy, but the Adam Sandler Halloween movie I was like my favorite movie that he's made in like the last decade, mostly because it's not like anything else.
It's like a terribly low bar, but
yeah, right. Yeah, but definitely not going to host a weekly movie night. I may walk around on tax or light myself on fire by the lake before I do that. So, yeah, maybe. I don't know. So, Orrin, you also included a little bit of bonus anonymous Letterboxd user here, yeah?
I just, so like looking through the review, the half-star reviews for Saint Maude were filled with gems of people like who really, like, you were saying earlier that we switched to Letterboxd users for this, and one of the reasons we switched is because no one hates movies as much as people on Letterboxd do.
Oh yeah,
like the people on Letterboxd like hate the shit out of movies just so much,
and will write 1,500 words on a website that doesn't pay them to vent how much they fucking hate it.
There were also like several that were just one word. Like there was one that was just "why," not even capitalized, no punctuation. It was just the word "why," and that was it.
There
were many delightful half-star reviews of Saint Maude, but no, the one I picked was someone who just wrote, imagine writing this, then having someone direct it. After that, watching it and thinking, this is good. Just by releasing this, A24 lost some credibility. And the thing I thought was hilarious about that was like, this is such an A24 movie.
Oh yeah,
this is the A24iest movie there ever was.
Yeah,
like
A24 were you watching?
Right. Like
right.
What credibility could they possibly have lost by releasing this? This is so their entire brand.
Yeah, like A24 is the same studio. And again, I like their shit, so this is not a complaint. But they made a movie about a killer dress where the dress doesn't really kill anybody. Like it's just around while people get killed, kind of.
And barely that. Like hardly anyone even dies in that movie. It was a really good. I love that movie, but it was a really weird movie.
Oh man. But yeah, like come on. Like it's like a slow thinker of a horror movie. What's A24 doing with like come on, guys. Like yeah. And they're very broad about it in the trailer, right? For the movie that brought you, or the studio that brought you Hereditary, and
From the studio that brought you 3 movies that are just basically this movie,
just like this one. Yeah. Arguably, they even kind of have a culty angle to it in Saint Maud. So yeah, like come on, guys.
They have similar music, like
yeah, right. Speaking of, I love the "Good Girls Go to Hell" song in the trailer. It's fucking awesome.
I had forgotten that was in the trailer. Like it's been so long since I saw that because this was supposed to come out, a century ago before the plague times. I had forgotten what the trailer was even like, and I'd forgotten that song was in it.
Yeah, so good. Yeah. Well, anything else that we want to say before we have run over this episode? But I never mind doing that when we have great guests on. So, anybody else have anything to add?
No.
Nope.
All right, Nadia, do you have any stuff coming out you would like to promote? All that kind of jazz.
Yeah. So let's see. One thing I wanted to say is I've got a story coming out in this anthology called Sisterhood from Chaosium, which is very related to the topic of this episode because it's all about women in religious sisterhoods of various kinds, and all of the writers are women.
Awesome.
So I wrote mine about sort of a political sisterhood in fascist Indonesia. But anyway, I think that would be very on topic for this episode.
Yeah, that sounds rad. When does it come out?
So digitally, it's already out.
Okay.
And the print comes out later this year.
Awesome. Well, we'll include a link here in the show notes so that.
Cool. That would be awesome.
Hopefully, yeah. If people want to read more of your stuff, which I highly, highly, highly recommend, check out that one. Do you are you active like on social media? If people want to see, all that kind of jazz, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter mostly at Nadia Bulkin. There's only one of me. I write teeny tiny movie reviews.
They're great.
That's my main claim.
I like it.
My main activity on Twitter. And my website's nadiabulkin.com. I just got the domain, so.
Cool. Awesome. There's only one Nadia Bulkin until somebody makes the real Nadia Bulkin on Twitter, and gotta have to dig around with that.
That's terrifying. That goes back to that whole like stolen identity theme.
Right. Like maybe you're not like the real Nadia Bulkin. Holy shit. Yeah. Right. Orrin, where can they find more of your stuff out there?
As always, I am Orrin Gray on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, all those places, and at orringray.com.
Very good. Well, you can check out more of my stuff at Ty Unsel on Twitter, where I tweet about the politics of horror and the horror of politics. You can find me teaching high school for one more day. Otherwise, over the summer, we'll be doing lots of stuff. Speaking of the summer, this is going to be the last episode of this season before we pick the mantle back up at the end of July and early August and plot our way forward from there. So if you like what we do here, check out Signal Horizon for all of our podcasts, all of our articles regarding, hopefully horror with a purpose. Otherwise, we will see. Oh, looked like you were going to say something more.
So speaking of summer, I almost forgot. If you happen to be local to Kansas, Analog Sunday, which is the thing I missed most during the pandemic, is coming back in June. It's going to be June 20th at the Screenland Armor. Awesome.
So. We love Screenland Armor. We love the folks that are, doing their special events. So yeah, check it out. Absolutely. Until then, class dismissed. All right.